Welcome back, dear students. This is the last session of this week, as well as the last session of the biggest session, project planning. If you make this, you already did 2/3 of the whole program. Congratulations for still being with us. Now, what we are talking about, as I mentioned before, we are still in the project planning. And we move now to the quality planning as a first step. Quality planning is a point not a lot of people do really understand what we're talking about. Before we start with quality planning, we need to identify what is the quality of a project. What really is the quality, how we define the quality of a project. And there's a simple way to find this out. The simple way is to go back to your objectives of the project. You remember we talked about scope of the project, time goals and cost goals. Out of those, you really can start on thinking about what makes now the quality of the project. Most of the quality elements will be the scope of work, but of course there are also elements like the time or the cost goals. It is important and crucial to identify the critical path of the quality. Which elements are important that we will really reach this quality? And try to find out how we can create a kind of a measurability of the quality. How we can measure the quality. Maybe you can measure it during the development of the project as well. And last but not least of the elements is that you need to identify a kind of controlling during the project implementation. You as a project manager need to be able to control the whole thing to make sure during project implementation that you are on track also concerning quality. Doesn't help if you develop a whole project, a whole hotel, coming back to our case study, that you develop a whole hotel and realize at the end of the planning that you just created a 4-star instead of a 5-star hotel. So, which are these relevant elements that create really the quality of the project? I think it's not hard to do, but it's worth to think about this in the planning process. Next step we just go on is the risk analysis. In every project, we can have some risks. It is very important to identify the risks. Which can be the risks we have to face? Is it influence of weather? Maybe if you plan an event in tourism, it's very important whether it's nice weather or bad weather. What you are doing with an open air concert, if it's raining, you still can handle it, or you have to postpone it or change the date. Or what are you doing if you're planning a concert and the artist doesn't appear or is sick or whatever? What are you doing if the transportation has a problem to bring the guests to your hotel and? That are kinds of risks you have to identify. You need to assess the risks. And that's very important that you are aware that's a big risk or a small risk. I tried to show this to you on this little chart on the bottom right side of the slide. You see there are two main factors, consequences and probability. If a risk has big consequences, say is avoiding the project from being successful, or people get killed or whatever, then it's an important risk. If it's probable the probability is high, then it's really a risk to take into consideration. But if the probability is low, maybe you can put aside the risk. Let me give you an example. If we plan a hotel and we rely on customers, and maybe we have to take into consideration the risk of being involved in a war. Now, my hotel is located in Switzerland, and maybe you know from history, I think the last war in Switzerland is some 200-300 years ago. I even don't remember. Of course, I don't remember because I'm not that old. So the probability that Switzerland gets involved in a war is very, very low. Even lower because Switzerland is neutral since 1848, so a long time. So this risk doesn't have to be assessed. But maybe if I'm planning an event, the weather conditions are really, really crucial because very often it's raining, or in winter we have lots of snow, which can block transportation lines like train or roads or whatever. That's a serious risk. For all the risks, we have to create alternative plans. We need to make a plan B. We don't have to create a new project, but we just need to know what will we do if this happens. And the main goal is to be prepared and not surprised if something happens concerning this risk. That's the only thing. You don't have to go into detailed planning what to do, unless it's a huge risk. You just can rely on simple things, on simple plans, on ideas how to handle, but then you are prepared and not surprised. Coming back to the overview, you see we did now the whole project planning. Last thing, the result of the project planning is the project concept. This is the last thing I would like to show to you now. The project concept is based on the project order if you do it in a clever way. But there are several points that are different towards the project order. Of course, it makes sense that we give the project a name. Bigger projects get an identity or a face and makes it easier to keep the team motivated. I would suggest to describe the initial position again, maybe a little bit wider than in the project order. Of course, the objectives have to be defined. Now you maybe ask yourself why they have to be defined. They are already defined in the project order, but you learned that due to this iterative process in the project management, it can be that we have to change the objectives and we have to revise them again. We need to talk about factors of success. They are influencing the quality planning very much. So we should identify them and maybe make them measurable. We need to have now a binding schedule and action plan. Best is, as you learned, as you surely remember, to provide a Gantt chart. This gives an overview over the simple phases, the tasks, and the time frame, as well as the milestones. I typically make a short description of each phase, which gives the project owner an overview what is planned to be done in this and that phase. The project organization has to be expanded by the competencies and the responsibilities of each team member or team group. We should say some words about the quality planning and the risk analysis, as discussed earlier in this session. And last but not least, reporting and evaluation must be treated again. This project concept, ladies and gentlemen, goes again back to the project owner. And the owner has to think about this and make his own total cost consideration and finally decide whether it's worth to invest that much money for this project. It's another approval to go, an important step, because after approving the project concept, it's the point of no return. From this point, you just go straight ahead in the project. And now you've seen, ladies and gentlemen, project planning is a real important element. And I really beg you that to give this element enough space. If you're not doing a proper job here, you will have problems in the project execution. That's it for this week, ladies and gentlemen. Next week we move over to the project implementation, and in the last week we discuss about the final phase. It's great that you still are here, and I wish you good luck with this quiz of this week. If you have any question, just contact me or your colleagues in the forum. Have a great weekend. See you soon.